Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in relation to the sun going around the earth. My name is Dan Fishman. I am the executive director of the People for Liberty, and we got a big announcement today. And that big announcement is so big that I'm not going to waste any more times with introductions or anything else. I'm going to bring on my very special guest, Dr. Joe Jorgensen. Joe, thanks so much for joining us here.
Hey, so good to be here. Thank you.
So I'm going to be selfish and spill the news first because I want to use a very special phrase. I want to introduce you for the first time as President Joe Jorgensen.
I like the sound of that.
I love the sound of it, and there's so many people who are excited about that. You have accepted the position of president of the board with People for Liberty. And that's an amazing thing for us, for the Liberty movement. And I was hoping you could tell me some of the stuff that made you think this was a great thing. I'll tell a little bit of the background. 3 weeks ago, you were a guest on one of our shows. Mm-hmm. We were overwhelmed by the response. People really love you, Joe. You embody so much of the Liberty movement. And what's best about us, that it became apparent this is the best communicator in the Liberty movement right now. And we want to get you up in a position where people are hearing from you all the time. And so I came to you, and we'd known each other for since the South Carolina convention for quite a while. And I said, Joe, it just makes complete sense to me that you should come on board as the chair of People for Liberty, or sorry, as the president, because I want to keep saying President Joe Jorgensen. Tell me what made you think that it was going to be a good fit.
Well, first, let's go back to our mission. First of all, I was very honored to be the presidential nominee of the Libertarian Party. I took it very seriously. And I don't look at it as just, okay, now I'm running for president. And from May through November, I go out there and talk to people, and then I just go home and hide. I look at it as I have an obligation. We have a tremendous Facebook following, Twitter following, and most people don't see politics as a sport like you and I do. You know, it's not a weekend, let's go out and see what's going on. What they do is about a month before the election, they start looking around and say, who's running and who should I vote for? And so I've got this following, thanks to the Libertarian Party, that I don't want to just go away. What we have to do is we have to be visible between the last presidential election to the next presidential election. And let me tell you, I'm not sure if I told you this story, but I was talking to a friend of mine who said, I had a friend who went to vote, calls me up that day and says, hey, I went to the voting booth, and in addition to Trump and Biden, there were a couple other names. There was a Joe Jorgensen. Who's he? And so what we have to do is the 4 years between elections, we have to get out there and get messaging. We have to have it so that when people go to the booth, they know they have another choice. They know it's not just the same two tired old choices that are giving us a worse world. And so my idea was to form an organization, and I'd already started doing that. I had a manager picked out. We had a treasurer. I even had a logo. The first round of a logo, I hired a graphics designer, the same guy who did a wonderful job with the campaign. If you liked the Joe Jorgensen logo with the flame, I went back to the same guy, said, okay, I need a new logo now for an organization I'm starting. And he came up with some terrific choices. We were, just about ready to file the paperwork and hit the go button when you called me. And I knew about the People for Liberty. And in fact, I realized, so not only am I a politician, although I hate to call myself that. Now I'm letting everybody know that, yes, I really am a college lecturer. I can actually talk. But there was an epiphany when I was at I was in Atlanta over their convention weekend. They were wonderful enough. They invited me to a luncheon the day after the convention, which I'm just so excited that they asked me. So of course I went down there. And your social media person from People for Liberty was there. And I was telling people about my new organization and how we're about ready to get started. And somebody asked, well, what's the difference between People for Liberty and your organization? And I said, well, I guess I would have to say that I had a more specific goal of increasing party membership. But of course, in order to do that, we need to grow the movement. And I began realizing, competition is good, but maybe not in this instance. Maybe it's better to join forces. And then you asked me, and everything was perfect.
It's one of those things that I found you to be just an amazing. So I talked about the South Carolina convention the very first time we met. You made a statement on stage that I'd never heard any libertarian say before. And I don't want to sound like a jaded libertarian, but we don't have a lot of ideas that haven't been at least explored. But you said this generation should be referred to as the opt-in generation. Mm-hmm. They understand liberty better than anybody else because they're used to that. And I'm like, that communicates to millennials libertarian philosophy in such a complete nutshell that it's just perfect. And so I'm thrilled. I am so thrilled that for you to be working with us, and especially because People for Liberty is one of those things that it is broader than just the Libertarian Party, and your campaign was actually much broader too, right? The number you got, I think, 4 times as many votes as the number of registered libertarians in the country. So you were resonating with a broad number of people. And I'm excited to see how that comes in. So, thinking about that and thinking about, where we're going to be going in that opt-in idea, one of the main messages that People for Liberty has been pushing is this idea of consent culture. Mm-hmm. And can you talk about how consent culture is really a real liberty message?
Well, even more than that, it's a human message. Keep in mind, I've got a PhD in psychology, and I also teach happiness at Clemson University.
Happiness.
Yes, I've taught it since 2009. So I teach a happiness class every summer. It's an online class. It's an awesome class. I even came up with little PowerPoints with all the little pictures, spent hours on each little 5 minutes with pictures. And one thing that we know about human happiness is that one of the main causes of human happiness is autonomy, being able to make your own decisions. In fact, my degree is actually in industrial organizational psychology. And we know that one of the biggest factors in work happiness, job satisfaction, is if you have that autonomy to make your own decisions, to decide what to do when. And so there's this basic need we have to make our decisions because that's what being human is all about. And one of the things that the pandemic has given us is I think it has just shown the raw, naked power that these politicians want just for the sake of power. I was horrified when I saw Cuomo talking about opening up the restaurants for Valentine's Day. And of course, everybody's happy, like, yay, we get to go out for Valentine's Day. But the way I will never forget, he used the word reasonable. He said that he was planning on opening it up for Valentine's Day, but that the restaurants came to him and said, you know what, we've got to get our staff practiced. We've got to get supplies in. Could we please, people begging this one man, please, can all of us open up our business a couple days before Thanksgiving? And his reply was, I said yes, because I thought it was a reasonable request. And it's like, seriously, you are somebody who's never produced anything in your life. You've got all of these people with their hard-earned dollars putting their lives into their businesses. And you come along and say, oh, that's a reasonable request and you're in charge. And I just hope that Americans recoiled as much as I did. And I think they are, because it's just not human nature for somebody, we even know that if you're an employee, you're much happier if your boss says, oh, sure, you can pick which job you do first. And now you've got somebody in government telling an owner who is risking everything how to run his company. It's just abhorrent. It's dreadful.
This is the thing that I love about you, Joe, is that you drop these liberty bombs that are just amazing. You know, the idea that pursuit of happiness is the ultimate libertarian responsibility, and it truly does make us happy, is something that I don't think that we've ever talked about in the liberty movement. In that, if we teach people to do what makes them happy, we're promoting liberty. That's
Well,
amazing. How did you come up with that idea?
well, yeah, and that's the nice thing. And by the way, the name of the class is Pursuing Happiness. It's not called Pursuit because we know that pursuing is an ongoing thing.
Right.
But I guess I look at it through the eyes. And here's the thing: I'm not allowed to call myself a psychologist because in South Carolina, I can only call myself a psychologist if I'm a clinical psychologist. In my home state of Illinois, I could call myself a psychologist. So let me use the term psychologist loosely. With my training, I just look at the world through the eyes of a psychologist. And if you think about it, psychology is basically the study of human beings, of how they act and how they look at things. And yeah, so my class, Pursuing Happiness, kind of like a manual for the human being. And if you look at government, government is the opposite of everything that's happiness. And one of the examples that I've used, for instance, is, do you remember the Parents Music Resource Council? Yeah.
And Dee Snider?
Dee Snider, exactly. Sometimes I switch the two names. I always have to think, is it PRMC or PMRC? My dyslexia kicks in. But so here we have Tipper Gore, who, by the way, wasn't even an elected official, if I recall, right? She was the
Nope, definitely not. Al Gore's
wife of the
wife.
vice president.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing her name on the ballot, which, by the way, my name was on the ballot when her husband's name was on the ballot. So I don't remember seeing her name. And yet here she is before a congressional committee. We've got Dee Snider with, you know, the wild, by the way, Twisted Sister for the younger people. like that means anything, like they've heard of Twisted Sister, right? But crazy hair out to here, blue, purple eyeshadow, you know, bright lipstick, out here saying we should be able to produce, you know, we're artists. We should be able to produce any music that we want and put it on the market and let the people decide whether they want it or not. And yet you've got these people on the other side, Tipper Gore, prim and proper, saying, we don't want you saying bad words on your CDs. And so they came up with a compromise where they put a little sticker on the CD that says, you know, parents advisory, whatever. Okay, so anybody who knows anything about psychology would know what would result from that, which is that CDs with those little stickers, sales of those CDs soared because people are told you can't have something. What happens is they decide that they want something. By the way, that's called reactance theory. Most people call it reverse psychology. But yes, thank you for that.
Yep, I had to show for the kids who don't know, Twisted Sister, We're Not Going to Take It. Look it up. Great video.
Yes. And by the way, I never saw, I actually was going to go see them. And then the person I was going to go see them with bailed on me or something. And I decided not to go alone. So, but, and yeah, too bad. We need to rehearse these, Dan, so that you don't have to go searching for pictures. So you can, but that's the problem with me. You never know what I'm going to say. I bring up Dee Snider and Twisted Sister.
Totally good. I mean, that's what we like. And I think, Joe, that's what resonates about you with so many people, is that you are authentic. You are not a scripted liberty robot. Everything that you say comes from your heart, and that differentiates you so much from the robots that we saw running against you in 2024. You get to say what's on your mind. You're not quoting, I mean, you ran as a libertarian, but you're not quoting dogma. You're talking to people's hearts, and that's an important thing. And so for me, it is a pleasure to produce shows that you're on, because
thank you.
Well, and just, you know, like the comments that are coming in here, and I apologize to everybody that I'm not able to put up all the comments at the same time, but right now we've got a lot of quotes coming in from Twisted Sister, which is awesome.
Yeah. And by the way, the biggest one is "We're Not Going to Take It," right? Which could be the libertarian anthem. Hey, I just stumbled onto something. Here's our
that's a great idea. We have our convention is coming up in 2022 in Reno, And if somebody wanted to put together a Twisted Sister cover band, I will make sure you get on the stage somehow.
Okay.
That would be awesome.
Now, my husband's a drummer, so there you go. And as far as being, and he's good with that genre. In fact, he's more into prog rock, like Neil Peart. So he would look at that as being, okay, I could do that in my sleep. But yeah, and you mentioned scripted. The one complaint that I got from the campaign, and see, here's how authentic I am. I'm gonna just come out and admit it, that people said, yeah, your speech kind of scripted, maybe not do pre-written speeches. And everybody said, but we loved your question and answer. We love when you talk off the cuff. So I'm going to be doing that a little more.
Well, and I think that's true for no matter who you are.
Yeah.
A static speech is a static speech.
Right.
But in reality, people don't get to really script their lives. Their lives come to them as, oh, you know what? Today I got a flat tire. The day before that, I had to figure out a way to, I burned the eggs while I was cooking them. Our lives are a series of things that, we react to. And I think that a natural response is always going to resonate more with the electorate. And that's the overwhelming thing that people said all the time, is that you are the natural candidate. You're the person who conveys what people do every day in their lives. And one of the things that's an important thing about.
Can I interrupt you right there?
Please go ahead.
And that's because I never wanted to be a politician. In fact, whenever a reporter would ask me, so how long have you been interested in politics? My answer is, I'm still not interested in politics. I look at voting libertarian as an act of self-defense. I don't want to be in office. I just see, again, people telling us what to do, saying, oh, it's reasonable if we open our restaurant at a certain time. So no, I'm in it for self-defense. I like the last one, not going to take it. Joe Jorgensen, not going to take it. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, Dan, I can't hear you.
So funny. I stood up for a second and I pulled my mic out.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out. Traditionally, on a People for Liberty broadcast, that would be a drinking event. So for those of you playing along at home, Dan talking without the mic on is a drinking event. The hashtag there, that long hashtag, actually leads me up to another thing. Right now, we're starting to push this hashtag NLDOS, which stands for the National Libertarian Day of Service. Mm-hmm. And you are an amazing spokesperson for this, because the National Libertarian Day of Service is going to be on May 1st. And through a complete coincidence, that's an important date.
It's my birthday, which you didn't know when you picked it. By the way, it's also the communist birthday, which I always jokingly tell people, yeah, me and the communists, we've got so much in common, got the same birthday. It's like, how ironic is that? But yes, you picked my birthday, May 1st. And basically what we want is, we're asking anybody who loves liberty to find a way to make the world a better place. And, not by going out and perhaps boring your friends with libertarian rhetoric, but maybe, clean up a park or have a bake sale or help out at a food bank or soup kitchen, whatever. And of course, if you do it, be sure to put on some kind of t-shirt that announces it. And now this isn't organized. And, we're libertarians. The last thing we want to do is, of course, tell libertarians what to do. But this is just a get out there and show how it can be done. And one nice thing about doing that is, one of the things that voters are worried about, that people in general are worried about, is that if we don't have government telling us what to do, if we don't have government taking money forcefully away from us to give to other people, then it's not going to get done, that people aren't going to be helped. And so it's great to show as much as possible how it will get done. It will get done. And, that's one of the things that we saw in the pandemic, people getting out there. And by the way, can I just throw in, and I hadn't planned to mention this, but, and it only tangentially applies, but I still think it's humorous. I was interviewed by somebody, I won't say the newspaper, a very nice young lady, well, lady my age, so young lady, actually met her in person in DC. And she kept saying, but we need the government, we need the military to get the vaccine out there. And I just kept asking her, since when has the government done anything right? And what was funny was, well, I mean, funny, sad, is that people were completely lost at how to get their vaccines. So we had companies like NBC, Universal out there with their own website. And we had all the way down to there was some 14-year-old kid who had helped like 100 people, 100 older people get their vaccination because they couldn't figure out the website. So the government can't even do something that simple. So the idea that it won't get done, look at all these people. Oh, and they also had what? The vaccine angels, COVID angels, I can't remember what they were called, but they were called angels who were like full-time basically helping people figure out how to get their vaccination because the government, as always, did such a horrible job of that.
You know, it's a great example of, I was trying to think of the things that government does well, and we, talked about this a little bit. And the one thing that government is amazing at is inaction. If you want to find something, if you want to find a way to stop something from happening effectively, that would be something that you put the government behind, and they'd be like, yeah, absolutely. Let us make a committee about that.
Well, actually, being a libertarian, we libertarians, we always think we can come up with a better answer. Do you mind if I change that from inaction to disaction? Because
sure, absolutely.
I would suggest that they say it's worse than doing nothing. They do things that get in the way and make it worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Is disaction a word, by the way? I'm gonna have to look that one up.
I am not sure, but if not, it should be, because it really is. There is no force greater for discouraging people from doing stuff than the government. And in fact, that's one of the important things about the National Libertarian Day of Service, is that I think all the time about the fact that the way government tries to stop us from caring for each other anymore. And it used to be we had a responsibility to each other. But, you look at in New York City, where Michael Bloomberg said, okay, restaurants can't give food to the homeless anymore.
Oh.
Right, exactly. Completely insane. Why did they do that? Did they do that because, the food that was safe, like if a homeless person walked into a restaurant and ordered a meal at 11:55, it's completely safe for the restaurant to serve them. But then suddenly at 12:01, the food is spoiled and they can't be given away anymore. Did they do that because they don't want us to have private solutions? They want us to depend. They want to say, oh no, you have to give us tax money so that we can feed the homeless instead of you feeding the homeless in your own voluntary organizations. And that's what National Libertarian Day of Service is all about. This idea that we say, look,
yes.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, and I was going to say, unfortunately, thanks to our income taxes being taken away and used, to help people, we've got an I gave at the office mentality, and it takes away the joy of giving. And what I like about this day is it's a true voluntary day. Every time I hear about a high school having forced volunteerism, it's like, okay, for your grade, you have to go work at a soup kitchen. And of course, I'm sure it's mostly the government-run schools that are doing this. Well, if you have to go do something, okay, now it's no longer voluntary, and they're stealing that joy from you. And by the way, in my happiness class, yes, I do teach that it is, some of these myths are correct. It is better to give than receive, and people who volunteer are happier than those who don't. And people are happier while they're volunteering. But the thing is it has to be true volunteering. And so leave it to the libertarians to do it the correct way by saying it's a volunteer day, do it if you like, as opposed to the way government does it, which is here's forced volunteerism, which makes no sense.
Right. And so I want to tell people a little bit more about that. Let me pop the NLDS page on there. And as it says at the bottom, it's National Libertarian Day of Service is May 1st. peopleforliberty.org/NLDOS. And we pop this up again. And if you scroll down, you guys will see there's a very simple form here at the bottom. You don't have to fill it out. We're not collecting information, anything like that. But we've got kind of a checklist of things that we can give you, like some ideas. You'll see some of them listed on the webpage, things that are easy for people to do to get in there and actually make a difference. Put your email in. We'll send you a copy of that, a kit of how to get people motivated, stuff like that. And this is something that people can really do together. Get together with your local organization, your local house of worship, or your bridge club. Maybe I'm dating myself there by saying that. But your Dungeons and Dragons club, your Twisted Sister fan club, whoever it is, get together and do something together and show, that's part of what libertarian is it's voluntary associations, us working with each other. And so people who want to get involved, there's also a Facebook group that, if you want to find somebody who's doing something in your neck of the woods, join the Facebook group. The link is on the NLDOS page. Get in there, share it up. Let's get a lot of people going. I'm excited for May 1st to be a huge event. Now, one of the other things that's exciting that we've got going on here is that we are in the process of trying to build it with People for Liberty, a group of people who are coordinators for Liberty, spokespeople for Liberty, content creators. And I don't know if you have seen this cartoon yet, but there's a political cartoon. You probably saw it with you in it. Had you seen this one yet, Joe?
Yeah, Steve Dasbach, our campaign manager, actually texted that to me the other night.
Yep. So this is a person, art by Carla, and we would encourage people to support her. And actually, she has agreed to help out People for Liberty. She's going to be creating some Liberty content. Yeah, exactly. And this is part of what we want to do is find people who are creating excellent content and put them in. I think, this was somebody had posted earlier on, essentially exactly what this says is that, you could finish a bottle and still be more coherent than Joe Biden, which is, I can't disagree with that. I've been astonished.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is true. I hate to admit it.
Well, it's one of those things that when we look at it and we see what they've done, what Joe has said and stuff like that, it's clear he's not a person with an original thought. He's just regurgitating sort of policy. I want to highlight another artist who's part of the People for Liberty family right now. We've been for the last week hosting a podcast, the Political Deep Dive with David Valente. Dave Valente is the chair of the West Virginia Party, as well as a member of the LNC. This is actually a politically neutral podcast. It's just one that gets us thinking and talking about political issues. And, I'm excited that I can ask him, man, you should do a show on happiness, because we just had Dr. Joe on talking about the pursuit of happiness, pursuing happiness. I think that's a great thing. And I love this idea that you're coming in as a person who has been doing that connection for really more than the last 18 months. But, since you started running in South Carolina, and obviously ran before with Harry Brown, but all the way up until November, all you're doing is connecting people with liberty ideas. Mm-hmm. And then the interesting thing about it, of course, is that you did one of the most exhausting things that can be done. You ran for president. You were in 47 states, I believe.
Not personally, but the campaign, I believe.
Yeah. During a pandemic, right? You were on the road, and it's just, can you talk a little bit about sort of the exhaustion of doing that, of what you had to give from yourself personally for that?
Well, first of all, even if I were exhausted, I would never admit it. And let me mention, I was a candidate first in the 90s. And so I pay attention to other candidates and kind of critique them and think, okay, don't do that, or, oh, that's a great idea, do that. So, my mind is always kind of clicking, watching other people. And of course, being a psychologist, I'm always interested in behavior anyway. And I don't know if you remember, but in 2016, Ted Cruz made that last ditch effort and had Carla Fiorini on his ticket. They were running as a ticket
Right.
to try to overcome Trump. Remember that? Because
Yep.
he was looking unstoppable, and he was. And I remember um, somebody stuck a microphone in front of her face as she was going up on the stage, and tell us something about what's going on, how's the campaign treating you, whatever. And she said, oh, we've been up since 4 o'clock this morning, and it's exhausting, but we're going to keep going. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, here she is. She's got a national camera in front of her. She could be using this time to talk about her platform, about voters, what they can do for voters. And instead, she's complaining about how exhausted she is. But what really, and I think the reason that it really hurt me, why it really resonated with me, is I thought, you know what, I can see myself doing that. So it was kind of note to self. If you ever run again, don't talk about yourself and how exhausting you are. And especially because, as I said, it was such an honor that the Libertarian delegates gave to me. I certainly don't want to complain about it. It's good stuff. Although I will admit, maybe I shouldn't be this authentic, but yeah, I'm one of those people who has like 38 tabs open in their Firefox, in their browser, and
I've been there.
16 Word documents open, especially doing this and teaching and other stuff. So I had to restart my computer, which is always painful, and because all the tabs go away. So when my Google Calendar came back up, it came up to last September. And wow. I looked at it and I was like, how did I get so much done? I mean, it was just like all these different colors, all these, it was just like, it was like tile. It was like mosaic tile. And right. I thought, oh yeah, how soon I forget.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I tell people we're actually people are wondering why I'm in this room with a door behind me as opposed to other broadcasts. My main computer shut down like 5 minutes before the broadcast was going to start. I'm like, hang on, Joe. So I'm on my laptop right now broadcasting. I appreciate everybody's patience around that. One of the things that is interesting right now, we are coming up on, I don't want to say the end of the pandemic, but like people are vaccinated. You see us opening up in a lot of places. I think Texas and a few other places are
Florida's doing great.
Mostly open. Tennessee never really had any restrictions. What would you like to see happen? I mean, there's a famous saying that actually isn't true, but that the Chinese ideogram for crisis is also opportunity. And it seems like there's a tremendous opportunity right now in front of us as we emerge. What are some of the things you'd like to see happen?
Well, Dan, you had mentioned to me how some of the laws were lifted, or at least temporarily set aside, for instance, for getting takeout alcohol. So,
right.
So some freedoms, some liberties were actually increased. However, it's going to be a knee-jerk response as soon as we don't need it. Okay, let's take away the liberties. Now, I'm hoping that people are going to say, hey, we did fine with it. Do you really have to take it away? Because that's one thing, is once you allow somebody to do something, once you give them a liberty, it's hard to take it away because they're used to it. Just like once you start giving people money, once you start giving people a government subsidy and they get used to it, it's hard to take that away too. So I'm hoping that some of these other things will stick around. We'll see. And again, I'm hoping that people just have this reaction of, how dare you? What do you mean you're going to tell me how many people we can have in a restaurant, or that I get a curfew, even though I'm a 46-year-old responsible business person, who has a spouse and kids in a house?
That's a great example of one of the things that we really want people to do, is to think about the fact that everything that is done voluntarily is so much more effective than anything that the government can ask us to do. And one of the great mysteries, we'll never know what would have happened in the United States if they'd said, look, we don't know what's going on, but we think if you wear a mask, you can protect somebody else's grandparent. And so, we're not going to tell you to do it, but maybe that's something you'd like to do. Maybe you'd like to protect somebody. If they'd asked,
Yeah, and can I tell you a story? And I won't name who
please.
this person. I won't name this person. I don't want
No.
to embarrass her, but somebody I know who's a bit liberal uh, was in a store with her father and I believe her brother, uncles, you know, couple of family members. And her father was told he had to wear a mask. And he got into this argument with the people, and I'm not wearing a mask and you can't tell me what to do and so forth. And she was just embarrassed and she said it was awful and she's never seen her dad make such a scene, that kind of thing. Well, I pointed out to her, I said, you know, even before the pandemic, there were many restaurants who said, no shirt, no shoes, no service, right? You have to
Right.
come in, you know, tie required. Wasn't there a famous, you know, yeah, like Phil Collins thing, but there was some musician who was given a jacket because they wouldn't let him into the restaurant without having a jacket on. And
Yep.
I said, you know, here's the thing. If your dad, I know I've met your dad. I've met your dad a few times. He seems like a wonderful guy. He's a very successful businessman and just a nice guy. I can't imagine him yelling at a restaurant owner and saying, oh, you're going to make me wear shoes to come into your restaurant. I refuse. No, it's because it was the government doing it. And
Right.
And secondly, if the government didn't do it, then you know there would be some establishments who would say, you have to wear a mask, and other establishments who said, no, we don't have to wear a mask. So you get to choose which one you want. Just like right now, you can go to a fancy restaurant that requires, you know, nice attire, or you can go to a beachside restaurant where you sit outside in your flip-flops. And being a libertarian is all about choice, and government is anti-choice. It's taking choice away. It's making us all the same and assuming we all have the same needs. You know, we all have the same retirement requirements because we're all put under one retirement system. We all need the same healthcare system. It's about taking away choice.
And that's such a great way to put it, because it ties back in with that idea of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So I am a person who, if I go to get ice cream, which I am totally psyched to be doing, there's an ice cream place around the corner that opens up April 1st. 90% of the time, I'm going to get vanilla. But I'm happy because I have choices, right? And I don't, even if I were limited to chocolate and vanilla, I would feel somewhat constrained. If there was a place that offered more choices, I might go there and still order vanilla. But to see all the other choices, that pursuit of happiness is the thing that's awesome for us. And one of the amazing things that I've seen happening is that so many businesses are starting up right now. There's a great report that people are starting businesses left and right. And that is a great libertarian thing to do, because you get to be your own boss. Now, you've done this. You actually have started a business, right? Can you talk a little bit? A couple. So just talk a little bit about sort of the liberty that comes out of starting a business, and how that's about opportunity and it's about happiness, even though it's the hardest job you'll ever have.
Well, and it's about accomplishment too, and it's about helping society. The fact that I came up with, and mine was in computers, and it wasn't, I didn't invent anything. It was basically providing services to people who were in areas where they weren't being served or didn't have a specific kind of product. And it's about, you see a need and you fulfill it, and it gets to the people who need it. And we're back to basically servicing society, and basically it's better for society for it to be a bottom up. And one of the examples I used in the nomination was, and they probably don't teach this in school anymore. I mean, of course not in government-run schools, because now they're all run by communists. But I was taught in like 5th grade or something, the reason that the Soviet Union fell and America is still standing strong was because they couldn't central plan, because it's almost impossible to central plan. And the example I was given was, if you've got steel, should it go to the cars, manufacturing cars, or should it go to manufacturing refrigerators? Well, in the Soviet Union, you've got people in one city deciding for this huge country whether it goes into cars or refrigerators. Whereas in the United States, you've got all the different customers deciding how much do they want to spend for a car? How much do they want to spend for a refrigerator? And if there's a backlog of, if there's a waiting line for people to buy a car, then guess what? Car manufacturers are willing to pay more for their car. If there's if there's a waiting line for refrigerators, then refrigerator makers are willing to pay more for steel. And so they taught me a valuable lesson, which is that money is actually information, that it's telling the society where the money should, or where the resources should go. It's information.
Right.
And so when you've got people starting up businesses, that's also information. People see that there's a need, and so they say, okay, it's worth it for me. It's worth it for me. Sorry, I've got,
no problem.
Maybe I shouldn't mention this. I've got my cat here who wants to be in the show too.
Cats are the most libertarian of all animals.
Yes. It's worth it for me to spend my life savings, because the information I have is, I think people here want that product. I think people will buy it from me, and I think I'll come out ahead. As instead of government planners, in which there are two problems here. First of all, they don't have all the information. We've got Washington, D.C. trying to have education that fits everybody in the country. But secondly, they're not spending their own money. They're spending other people's money. And so if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting up your own company, you are saying, according to the information, it is worth it for me to sacrifice, to risk, to gamble my life savings, because it's needed here. But for somebody in government to say, sure, let's raise taxes and let's just put money over here, you're not getting the best. The money's not being spent the best, and the public is not being served the best.
Right. And one of the critical things about that too, there's a great, people in the comments are talking about books. There's another book that I would recommend to people called The Fatal Conceit, one of Hayek's last books. And he talks about the fact that, you look at this amazing society that we live in, and let's, as a small example, we'll just take a look at the cell phone, the iPhone and the Android, and there's a few other manufacturers out there. Those are all built on top of 1,000 failures, and that's an important part of the free market process. Is that people try to bring products to market, and then people buy what they want. I'm a person who worked for an old telecommunications company called Palm. And for a while, we had the best product was out there. And then Apple ate our lunch. Apple and BlackBerry and all these other companies. That's great. That's great for consumers, that people are trying to do all these millions of things and finding what is the best for them. And sometimes there's a market for more than one. I talked about choice in ice cream. I'm happy that I have a choice in a cell phone.
Yeah, in fact, I also teach social psychology sometimes, and there's a section on competition. Now, of course, I unlike liberals, I don't come in and just lay out my my political philosophy, because students and their parents are paying tuition to learn psychology, not my personal political beliefs. So I never just come in and talk libertarianism. But if there's a section in the chapter that kind of fits libertarianism, I sure give some examples. But we talk about competition in social psychology, and I point out to my class, why we've got such great cell phones and great computers? It's because Steve Jobs and
Bill Gates, Steve Wazinski,
yeah,
Wozniak.
Steve Jobs and Bill Gates hated each other. They wanted to outdo each other. And it's
Yep.
a good thing we had competition. Now, look at the other way, government. Government is, oh, they're all getting together and they're going to all put their heads together and come up with one thing. It's like, no, I want people working against each other. Which,
Yeah,
like I said, in one way, can I circle back around to
please.
joining People for Liberty? In one way, it's like if I had my own organization as I had started. And by the way, I've had a lot of people ask me, what have you been doing since the election? And that's actually one of them, was getting this organization almost up and running, even with the logo and everything. But this is one time when I thought, competition isn't going to be better. It's going to be better for us to join forces. However, we're still competing against other organizations. And maybe I shouldn't say this, but in one way, we're kind of competing against the National Party, because we're going out there and trying to spread the general message of liberty, of bringing people aboard for freedoms in a more broad sense, as opposed to a specific membership drive. Although we will increase membership while doing it.
Right. Well, and I like to think that we have different purposes. For example, one of the things we talked about, the fact, and we talk about this on the webpage with the thing I just showed, where we, our press announcement with you being the president and stuff like that. One of the things we talk about is that you are actually a transcendent figure in American politics, because you are the first, not only the first PhD, but also the first female candidate to be on the ballot in all 50 states twice. Mm-hmm. Nobody's ever done that before. And it's an important statement about that stuff. And, circling back around to, you coming in as the president of the People for Liberty, you're right. We're all competing to make the world free. Mm-hmm. That's the thing about it. And that's what benefits us. We talked about all these different cell phone manufacturers. The fact that there's all these different organizations out here trying to make the world more free is awesome. That benefits all of us. And People for Liberty is one of those organizations. And we have a broad-based mission. We are looking to find amazing communicators. And that's why we are so thrilled to have made this announcement about, you being the new president, and I get to say it once again, President Joe Jorgensen, president of the board of the People for Liberty. So I know we ran a little long on time. We're
libertarians. We get to do what we want, right?
Well, so that's exactly it. I mean, that's one of the things that I love about, we talk about changes, and things that, the fact that you can have takeout alcohol and that's going to be there forever. I think that there's going to be a new push into homeschooling, because there's some people who hate Zoom homeschool, but there's some people who think it's the best thing ever. Get a bunch of kids together online, stuff like that. People are going to have the freedom to pursue that. And a lot of responsibility is on us, the liberty community, to make sure that the industries that are threatened by all the innovation that's come out during the pandemic don't get to pass laws that shut down that innovation.
Yep. And one thing I'm going to really shout from the rooftops now, I'm not sure if you saw the numbers, but twice as many private schools stayed open as public schools, even from last August. The number was something like 76% of private schools stayed open. In other words, most of them, and only 38% of public schools. And, this is, and I don't want to simplify it to the fact that, oh, great, the pandemic now gave me another argument. But one thing that I got to admit was could be a challenging question. Back in the 90s when I first started, well, actually in the 80s, before I ran for office, when I was just telling my friends about libertarianism, is people just didn't like the idea that, well, of people being in charge of their own education. And, well, what about parents who abuse their kids? What about parents who maybe won't send their kids to school? We have to have truancy laws. We have to have government in charge of the education, or kids don't get educated. Well, look what we have now. We've got parents begging, please, please, please let my kid go back to school. And we've got teachers off in the Bahamas telling other people, oh, isn't this great, pandemic. So no, now we have empirical evidence. And as a scientist, I love that. Now we have empirical evidence showing, no, Parents want the best for their kids. Parents want their kids to be educated. It's the government, it's the teachers' unions who are saying, no, we'd rather be in the Bahamas and maybe teach remotely and maybe not.
Right. Who's going to be more invested in
Mhm.
a quality education than the parents of the children? The more freedom that they have in terms of doing that, the better it's going to be.
Right, and we
And
would, and we said that for decades, but people still kind of had a show me attitude because all they had ever known was government education. And so all we had to say was, no, we think, we didn't really have any proof that yes, parents cared more for their education than the teachers, because we've got such a powerful teachers union, and because we've got government and politicians going out there saying, oh, the children. Now we have proof. Now we can point to data.
well, and so that's an example to loop it back around to the National Libertarian Day of Service, which is May 1st, happens to be your birthday. You can find out more about it, peopleforliberty.org/NLDOS, National Libertarian Day of Service. Links at the bottom. That's something that people can do because there is a lot of interest in homeschooling. If you're a person familiar with homeschooling, maybe that's what you want to do is say, hey, anybody who wants to find out about homeschooling, we're coming up to the end of this school year. Who knows what next school year is going to come out? I'm just going to have a free talk in my neighborhood if anybody wants to learn more about homeschooling, answer your questions, stuff like that. National Libertarian Day of Service can take any form that you want. And if you're helping to educate people, you were talking earlier about how data is valuable information, sharing information, that you couldn't be of more service to your fellow man than sharing valuable information with them. And so, that's the libertarian way as much as anything else. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, and Dan, and sorry to interrupt, but I get really excited.
No, that's good. I like it.
You're also implying choice. We can have one group talking about homeschooling. We can have another group talking about a different kind of choice. It reminds me of AT&T when it was a big government monopoly and they told you could have any color phone you want as long as it was black. Well, with the free market, with people making their own choices and putting out their own ideas, now we have real choice.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. Freedom is real choice. Government is the illusion of choice. And, they have these, we can go off on that a long time, and that will take us past the end of our broadcast. So tell me, Joe, what, first of all, I know that you're traveling around to some conventions and stuff like that. If people wanted to see you in the next month or so in person, where would be the best place to do it?
Let's see. And by the way, let me just point out, I've accepted every state convention offer I've gotten. I've jumped at the chance, awesome. Except for there was one. I had already committed myself to a different state halfway across the country, so I couldn't go to both in the same day. But I've jumped at the choice of every state who's asked me. The next one will be in Wisconsin, I believe, towards the end of April, like April 24th, I believe. And then I'll be in California, May 5th. And I'm not sure. So
that's awesome.
Look at the others.
I'll tell people we have the upcoming conventions and a few other things listed on the People for Liberty events website. So go there, take a look at them, find out when the conventions are. Chances are pretty good. Click on them, click through to see what's happening. Joe might be in a state near you.
Oh, and Freedom Fest. I will be at Freedom Fest speaking.
Freedom Fest in South Dakota this year in Rapid City.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Here it is in campaign mode. They pretty much tell you where to go when, and
gotcha.
half the time I didn't know what state I was in. So
yep, I just want to quickly throw in Mimi, chair of the California Party, May 14th through 16th. It's going to be in Visalia, which is near Fresno. And I will tell you, having been to the California convention a few times, they put on an amazing show, and I'm really excited that I'm this close to buying my ticket right now. Pennsylvania is the same weekend. I could drive to Pennsylvania. Maybe we send somebody. I don't know. It's really close though. I have so many great friends in California, and you're going to be there, which is a big plus for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for Mimi. I hope I might have given the wrong date. I'm sorry if I did. And by the way, speaking of great quotes, somebody put along great quotes. Mimi contends that perhaps cats aren't so libertarian because you could all get them to do the same thing with cat food. It's easy to get cats all corralled. Just put tuna fish out there. So she prefers to call it hummingbirds. They're the ones you can't corral.
Hummingbirds, I've heard that. I've heard butterflies as well.
No, she said butterflies. Oh my God. Okay, I'm going to stop quoting other people. I'm sorry, Mimi. I messed up your thing, but I did get the cat part right.
So that's awesome. I'm glad that you're going to be out there. National Libertarian Day of Service. We're going to be talking about it more. If you're a liberty organization, you can call it your own. Say that you invented National Libertarian Day of Service. We don't care about who owns it. We just want libertarians to get out there and do something. May 1st, National Libertarian Day of Service. And I know there's a lot of libertarians who are out there doing stuff already. Mm-hmm. That counts. That counts as National Libertarian Day of Service because we're libertarians. We're not going to tell you have to do it on May 1st either. May 1st is just a suggestion. Happens to be Joe's birthday. And if you want to get out there in a libertarian garb, probably, you bought something from the LP or from People for Liberty, or maybe you have a Jorgensen campaign shirt, whatever it is, you guys can wear that out. It's going to make a big impact. Joe Jorgensen, Dr. Joe Jorgensen, President Joe Jorgensen. Thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure to have you on the air. And I am so excited that we are now in an organization working together to set the world free.
Oh, and me too, Dan. Thank you so much. I'm just thrilled that you're part of it. And to Lauren, they did a great job with the Let Her Speak. And so thrilled to be here.
It's a great point. Our founder, Lauren Postler, deserves a shout out. An amazing team. Casey Daly, who, was actually the originator of the Let Her Speak idea. She's like, why aren't people talking about that? And it was something that resonated. That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be bringing a lot of liberty ideas that resonated, and having Joe on board is going to make that happen. I want to thank everybody else. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Just one more quick thing. When I was at the Kentucky State Convention, somebody asked a question. They said, it seemed like you had two campaigns, like your regular campaign and the Let Her Speak campaign. It seemed like those were two different things. And I said, it's because there were two different things. And again, this is free market. And thanks to Lauren and Casey, everybody, for coming up with that. So it was two different things. That wasn't our brainchild. That was People for Liberty's brainchild. I can't hear you.
Everybody knows what that means. We are grateful that is, the thing is, I have a loud water bottle. And so when I go to the water bottle, I mute. And then everybody can hear it. So that's the explanation of that. That's it for our show. Thank you guys so much. We're excited. Go to peopleforliberty.org to find out more about our organization. People for Liberty /NLDOS, National Libertarian Day of Service, to find out more about getting involved in the National Libertarian Day of Service. And then we're going to start putting up on our event calendar where Joe's going to be. So, if you want a chance to see Joe in person, we've got a good calendar going. You can find all that stuff out. And we're excited for everybody. Let's make sure that all these gains that Liberty has made with the reduction of laws, stuff like that we keep them. Let's make sure that we're all in the fight for liberty. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Dan.